Chapter 15, Part 1 continued, of More Love to Thee, The Life and Letters of Elizabeth Prentiss. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Jennifer Painter. More Love to Thee, The Life and Letters of Elizabeth Prentiss, by George Prentiss. Chapter 15, Part 1, continued. Scores of such grateful testimonies as this might be given. To all who knew and loved her well, Mrs. Prentiss was an inspiration. They delighted to talk about her to each other, and even to strangers. They repeated her bright and pithy sayings. They associated her with favourite characters in the books they read. The very thought of her wrought upon them with gracious and cheering influence. An extract from a letter of one of her old and dearest friends, written to her husband after her death, will illustrate this. On the very morning of her departure, I had been conversing with my physician about her. He spoke in admiration of her published works, and I tried to give him a description of her personal characteristics. The night before, in my hours of sleeplessness, I recounted the names of friends who I thought had been most instrumental in moulding my character, and Mrs. Prentiss led the list. How little did I dream that already her feet had safely touched the shining shore. In all the 33 years of our acquaintance, I loved her dearly and reverenced her most deeply, but between us there was such a gulf that I always felt unworthy to touch even the hem of her garment. Whenever I did touch it, strength and comfort were imparted to me. How much I was indebted to her most tender sympathy and her prayers in my own great sorrow, only another world will reveal. Is it not a little remarkable that her last letter to me, written only a few weeks before her death, closed with a benediction? I could go on talking about her without end, for I have often said that there was more of her, and to her, and in her, than belonged to any 5 women I ever knew. How exceedingly lovely she was in her own home. I remember you once said to me, "The greatest charm of my wife is, after all, her perfect naturalness." All who knew her must have recognized the same winning characteristic. She was always fresh and always new, for she had the wellspring of wisdom as a flowing brook. Were you not struck, in reading Thomas Erskine's letter on the death of Madame de Broglie, by the wonderful likeness between her and dear Mrs. Prentiss? Twin sisters could scarcely have resembled each other more perfectly. Such passages as the following quite startled me. Her friendship has been to me a great gift. She has been a witness to me for God, a voice crying in the wilderness. She has been a warner and a comforter. I have seen her continually thirsting after a spiritual union with God. I have heard the voice of her heart crying after God out from the midst of all things which make this life pleasant and satisfying. She had all the gifts of mind and character, intelligence, imagination, nobleness, and thoughts that wandered through eternity. She had a heart fitted for friendship, and she had friends who could appreciate her. But God suffered her not to find rest in these things. Her ear was open to his own paternal voice, and she became his child, in the way that the world is not and knoweth not. I see her before me, her loving spirit uttering itself through every feature of her beautiful and animated countenance. There was an unspeakable charm about her. She had a truth and simplicity of character, which one rarely finds even in the highest order of men. I know nobody like her now. I hope to pass eternity with her. It is wonderful to think what a place she has occupied in my life since I became acquainted with her. You know it is my belief that we become better acquainted with our friends after they have passed on within the veil, and may it not be that they become better acquainted with us too? loving us more perfectly, and forgiving all that has been amiss? To her eldest son, New York, May the 12th, 1878. This is your father's birthday, and I have given him, to his great delight, a Fairbanks postal scale. His 20-years-old one would not weigh newspapers or books, and it is time for an improvement on it. On Thursday evening there was a festival at our church in aid of sick mission children. Everybody was there with their children, and it was the nicest affair we ever had. Em and I went, and enjoyed it ever so much. I took between $4 and $5 to spend, though I had given between 20 and 30 to the mission, but did not get a chance to spend much, as Mr. M took me in charge and paid for everything I ate. Your father and I rather expect to go to East River, Connecticut tomorrow to help Mrs. Washburn celebrate her 70th birthday, but the weather is so cold he doubts whether I had better go. A went on a long drive on Friday and brought back a host of wild flowers, which I tried with some failure and some success to paint. May the 19th. We went to East River on Monday afternoon and came home on Thursday, making a delightful visit. On Tuesday, Mrs. W. and I went to Norwich to see the Gilmans. I was very tired when we got back and had to go to bed at 7:30. The next day it rained, so Mrs. W. and I fell to painting. She became so interested in learning Mrs. Fisher's system that she got up at 5 the next morning and worked 2 hours. In the evening your father gave his lecture at a little club room, got up chiefly by Mr. and Mrs. Washburn at their own expense. It is just such a room as I should like to build at Dorset. On Thursday morning Mrs. W. took me out to drive through their own woods and dug up some wildflowers for me. A has a Miss Crocker, an artistic friend from Portland, staying with her. A very nice, plucky girl. She wants me to let her take my portrait. H is full of a story of a pious dog who was only fond of people who prayed, went to church regularly, and, when not prevented, to all the neighbourhood prayer meetings, which were changed every week from house to house, his only knowledge of where they would be held being from Sunday notices from the pulpit. I believe this the more readily because of Pharaoh's always going to my Bible reading at Dorset and never barking there, whereas if I went to the same house to call, he barked dreadfully. We are constantly wondering what you boys will be. Good men, I hope, at any rate. Good night, with a kiss from your affectionate mother. The substance of the following letter of Mrs. Washburn, giving an account of the visit to East River, as also her impressions of Mrs. Prentiss, was written in response to one received by her from an old friend in Turk's Island. I am most thankful that we had that last visit from dear Mrs. Prentiss. It was a rare favour to us that she came. Her health was very delicate, and a slight deviation from the regular routine of home life was apt to give her sleepless nights. Dr. P. had sent us word that he was going to be in New Haven and would give us a call before returning to New York. We were overjoyed at the prospect of seeing him, and wrote immediately begging Mrs. Prentiss to come with him. She, ever ready to sacrifice her own ease for the sake of giving pleasure to others, and knowing that the 15th of May would be my 70th anniversary, and that I perfectly longed to see her, took the risk of personal suffering upon herself to satisfy my earnest desire, and came. They arrived on the 13th in the late afternoon train. She was so bright and cheerful, it was difficult to notice any traces of the weariness which she must have felt. We passed a delightful evening, and as Dr. P. was to spend a part of the next day in New Haven, we formed a plan for Mrs. Prentiss and me to go to Norwich at the same time and make a brief visit to our mutual friends, the Misses Gilman. Mr. Washburn telegraphed to them that we were coming. On arriving at New London, we found, to our dismay, that we had been misinformed in regard to the trains, and that the one we had taken did not connect with the one to Norwich, which had been gone 2 hours. So there we were, left alone on the platform, strangers in the place, with no means of either going on or returning. What should we do? Our first thought was to procure, if possible, some conveyance to take us to Norwich and back, but this we found could not be done for want of time, the distance between the two cities being 14 miles or more. Fortunately for us, a young lad appeared, who promised to take us to our friends in Norwich, allow us half an hour to spend with them, and drive to the station there in time for the return train to New London and East River. He looked so honest and true that we felt we could trust him, and we acceded to his terms at once. As soon as he could get his carriage ready, we started off on our untried way. It began at the foot of a long hill, and continued up and down over a succession of the same kind, with very rare exceptions of a level space between them, through the whole distance. But the scenery was so varied and beautiful, we thought if our only object in setting out had been a drive, we could not have chosen one more charming. The weather was fine, and dear Mrs. Prentiss in her happiest mood. As for me, nothing marred my enjoyment but fear that the fatigue would be too much for her, and an undercurrent of anxiety lest by some mishap we should fail to re-arrive at the home station in time to meet our husbands, who would be waiting for us. But if she had any such misgivings, nothing in word or manner betrayed it. So entire was her self-control, and so delicate her tact, not to throw the faintest shadow across the wisdom of my precipitate arrangements. She was as happy as a bird all the way, and talked delightfully. We found our friends had been in a state of great excitement on our account, having received the telegram, and knowing that we had taken the wrong train, so that our unexpected arrival was greeted with even more than their usual cordiality, and they were specially gratified to see Mrs. Prentiss, who almost without looking discovered 100 beauties in and around their lovely home, which it would have taken the eyes of an ordinary guest a week to notice. The very shortness of our time to stay intensified our enjoyment while it lasted. Our half-over was soon over, and we came away with our hands full of flowers and our hearts as full of love. We arrived in good time and met our husbands waiting for us at the station. Dear Mrs. Prentiss did not appear to be very much fatigued while recounting in her inimitably pleasant manner the various experiences of the day. A restful night prepared her for the quiet enjoyments of the next day, which we spent mostly at home, merely making short calls in the morning on my two sisters, and slowly driving, or rather, as I call it, taking a walk in the buggy, through the woods, stopping every few minutes to look at or gather ferns or mosses or budding wildflowers that could not escape her beauty-loving eye. The afternoon we remained in the house, occupied with our pencils. She painted a spray of trailing arbutus, talking while she was doing it, as nobody else could, about things beloved and fair. Our darling Julia was with us, completely charmed with her, and as busy as we, trying with her little hands to make pictures as pretty as ours. In the evening, Dr. P. gave his most interesting lecture on Recollections of Hurstmonceux in our reading room, but Mrs. Prentiss was not able to go, which I regretted the more because I knew many ladies would be there who came almost as much to see her as to hear him. They were greatly disappointed, but enjoyed every word of the lecture, as well they might. The next day was all too short. It seemed to me that I could not let them go, but she had more than enough for her ever busy hands and mind and heart to do in preparation for going to her summer home, and we had to say good-bye. A few short, characteristic loving notes came from the city before she left, and I did not hear from her at Dorset till the overwhelming news came of her death. I could not control my grief. Little Julia tried to comfort me with her sweet sympathy. "Dear Grandma," she said, "I'm sorry too. I cannot feel so bad as you do, because you loved her so much, and you loved her so long. I loved her too, and I can think just how she looked when she sat right there by that little table, talking and painting those beautiful flowers. Oh, I am very sorry." And here the poor child's tears flowed again with mine. So will all the children who knew her say, "We remember just how she looked." Yes, there was no mistaking or forgetting that kindly, loving look. Julia's mother had felt its influence from her own early childhood till she left her precious little one to receive it in her stead. To each of these half-orphaned ones in turn, I had to read little Susie's 6 birthdays, and both always said to me when I finished, "Please read it again." She could read and understand the heart of children through and through, as indeed she could everybody's, and that was, perhaps, her chiefest charm, a keen eye to see and a true heart to sympathize and love. She was absolutely sincere, and no one could help feeling that she was so. We felt ourselves fairly imaged when standing before her, as in a clear plate glass mirror. There were no distorted lines caused by her own imperfections, for although she considered herself compassed with infirmity, no one else could take such a view of her, but only saw the abundant charity which could cover and forgive a multitude of failings in others. We felt that if there was any good in us, she knew it, and even when she saw them, with all our faults, she loved us still, and loved to do us good. You would like me to tell you how she looked? You can form some idea from her picture, but not an adequate one. Her face defied both the photographer's and the painter's art. The crayon likeness, taken shortly before her death by Miss Crocker, a young artist from Maine, is, in some respects, excellent. The eyes and mouth, not to speak of other features, are very happily reproduced. She was of medium height, yet stood and walked so erect as to appear taller than she really was. Her dress, always tasteful, with little or no ornament that one could remember, was ever suited to the time and place, and seemed the most becoming to her which could have been chosen. She was perfectly natural, and though shy and reserved among strangers, had a quiet, easy grace of manner, that showed at once deference for them and utter unconsciousness of self. Her head was very fine and admirably poised. She had a symmetrical figure, and her step to the last was as light and elastic as a girl's. When I first knew her, in the flush and bloom of young maternity, her face scarcely differed in its curving outlines from what it was more than a quarter of a century later, when the joys and sorrows of full-orbed womanhood had stamped upon it indelible marks of the perfection they had wrought. Her hair was then a dark brown, her forehead smooth and fair, her general complexion rich, without much depth of colour except upon the lips. In silvering her clustering locks time only added to her aspect a graver charm, and harmonized the still more delicate tints of cheek and brow. Her eyes were black, and at times wonderfully bright and full of spiritual power, but they were shaded by deep smooth lids, which gave them when at rest a most dove-like serenity. Her other features were equally striking. The lips and chin exquisitely moulded and marked by great strength as well as beauty. Her face, in repose, wore the habitual expression of deep thought and a soft earnestness, like a thin veil of sadness, which I never saw in the same degree in any other. Yet, when animated by interchange of thought and feeling with congenial minds, it lighted up with a perfect radiance of love and intelligence, and a most beaming smile that no pen or pencil can describe, least of all in my hand, which trembles when I try to sketch the faintest outline. Hundreds of heart-stirring memories crowd upon me as I write, but it is impossible to give them expression. Her books give you the truest transcript of herself. She wrote, as she talked, from the heart. To those who knew her, a written page in almost any one of them recalls her image with the vividness of a portrait, and they can almost hear her musical voice as they read it themselves. But alas, in reality, no more her low sweet accents can we hear, no more our plaints can reach her patient ear. Oh, loved and lost, oh, trusted, tried and true, oh, tender, pitying eyes for ever sealed, how can we bear to speak our last adieu? How to the grave the precious casket yield, and to those old familiar places go that knew thee once and never more shall know? I hear from heaven a voice angelic cry, Blessed, thrice blessed are the dead who lie beneath the flowery sod and graven stone. Yea, saith the answering spirit, for they rest for ever from the labours they have done. Their works do follow them to regions blest. No stain hereafter can their lustre dim. The dead in Christ from henceforth live in him. O doubly dear transfigured friend on high, we, through our tears, behold thine eyelids dry. By him who suffered once and once was dead, but liveth evermore through endless days, God hath encircled thy redeemed head with rays of glory and eternal praise, and with his own kind hand wiped every trace of tears and pain and sorrow from thy face. C. W. Wildwood, March the 7th, 1880. One of the notes referred to is as follows. Dear Mrs. Washburn, if you judge by my handwriting, you will have to conclude that I am 100 years old. But it all comes of my carrying a heavy bag too long, and is all my own fault for trying to do too many errands in one trip. Your dear little chair, the like of which I should love to give to 540 people, only cost $2.50, so I enclose my cheque for the rest of your $10. We sent off Mrs. Badger's parcel early this morning. I hope digging and driving and packing and climbing in my behalf has not quite killed you. A lot of flowers in 2 boxes came to me from Matewan while I was gone, and as my waitress fancied I had been shopping, as if I should shop at East River, she did not open the boxes or inform the children, so the spectacle of withered beauty was not very agreeable. A&M send love and thanks. The flowers you gave me look beautifully. Give our love to Mr. W. and Julia, and write about her. We shall not soon forget our charming visit to East River. In acknowledging this note, Mrs. Washburn alludes to one of Mrs. Prentiss's most striking traits, the eager promptitude with which she would execute little commissions for her friends. It was as if she had taken a vow that there should not be one instant's delay. I do hope you have not been made sick by doing so many errands in such a short time. The little chair has come, and Mr. W. is much pleased with it. Nobody is so punctual as you. We were all amazed at receiving the picture so soon. How could you possibly have gotten home and packed it and marked the catalogues and bought the chair and written the cheque and sent me the little package of Japanese corn seed and written me the note, and have had a moment even to look at A's portrait? It is a mystery to me. You are a wonder of a woman. You are a genius. You are a beloved friend. I thank you again and again. Just think of the good you have done us. Shall I send you some more daisies? I have written in the greatest haste. That is the reason I have done no better, and not because I am 70 years old. Here is her last note to Mrs. Washburn, dated June the 3rd. The box of daisies, clover and grass came on Saturday. We set the plants out in the box in which they came, and mixed the grass with what cut flowers we had in the very prettiest receptacle for flowers I ever saw, just given M. The plants look this morning like a piece of wildwood and a piece of you, and will gladden every spring we live to see. We are packing for Dorset, though we do not mean to go if this weather lasts. I wonder if you have a daily rose. I have just bought one, first heard of it at the Centennial. It is said to bloom every day from May to December. I am going out now to do ever so many errands for H's outfit for college. Give our dear love to Mr. Washburn and Julia. Oh, what a mercy it is to have somebody to love." On the 6th of June Mrs. Prentiss went to Dorset for the last time. Her husband, after her departure, thus referred to this period: "For 4 or 5 weeks after coming here she was very much occupied about the house, and seemed rather weary and careworn. But the pressure was then over, and she had leisure for her flowers and her painting, for going to the woods with the girls, and for taking her favourite drives with me. She spoke repeatedly of you and other friends. On the 23rd of July I started for Monmouth Beach. The week preceding this little journey was one of the happiest of our married life. No words can tell how sweet and loving and bright, in a word, how just like herself, she was. The impassion of that week accompanied me to the seaside, and continued with me during my whole stay there. As day after day I sat looking out upon the ocean, or walked alone up and down the shore, she was still in all my thoughts. The noise of the breakers, the boundless expanse of waters, the passing ships, going out and coming in, recalled similar scenes long ago on the coast of Maine, before and after our marriage, scenes with which her image was indissolubly blended. Then I met old friends, and found new ones, who talked to me with grateful enthusiasm of stepping heavenward, More Love to Thee, O Christ, and other of her writings. In truth, my feelings about her, while I was at Monmouth Beach, were quite peculiar, and excite my wonder still. I scarcely know how to describe them. They were at times very intense, and, I had almost said, awestruck, seemed bathed in a sweet Sabbath stillness, and to belong rather to the other world than to this of time and sense. How do you explain this? Was my spirit perhaps touched in some mysterious way by the coming event? Certainly, had I been warned that she was so soon to leave me, I could hardly have passed those days of absence in a mood better attuned to that in which I now think of her as for ever at home with the Lord. The following are 2 of her last letters. To Mrs. Condict, Cowningfells, July the 22nd, 1878. To begin with the most important part of your letter, I reply that neither Mr. Prentiss or myself have ever had any sympathy with Second Adventists. All the talk about it seems to us mere speculation and probable doom to disappointment. I do not see that it is as powerful a stimulant to holiness as the uncertainty of life is. Christ may come any day, but he may not come for ages. But we must and shall die in the merest fragment of an age, and see him as he is. It will be a day of unspeakable joy when we meet him here or there. I shrink from unprofitable discussion of points that, after all, can only be tested by time and events. I do not think our expecting Christ will bring him a minute sooner, for the early church expected him, yet he came not. There has been so much wildness in theories on this subject that I am sore when I hear new ones advanced. None of these theories have proved to be correct, and I do not imagine any of them will. I have been busy indoors, upholstering not only curtains and couches, but ever so many boxes, as our bureaus are shallow and our closets small. I made one for A, large enough for her to get into, and she uses it as she would a room, suspending objects from the sides and keeping all her artistic implements in it. I began my Bible reading last Thursday, the hottest day we have had, but there was a good attendance. My G met with an accident from the circular saw, which alarmed and distressed me so that his father had to hartshorn and fan me, while the girls did what they could for G till the doctor could be got from Factory Point. His eyebrow was cut open and his forehead gashed, but all healed wonderfully, and we have reason to be thankful that he did not lose an eye, as he was so near doing. At any time when you must have change, let me know, as there are often gaps between guests, and sometimes those we expected fail. Mr. Prentiss is, apparently, benefited by hot weather and is unusually well. Thanks for the needles, which will be a great comfort. Have you painted a horseshoe? I had one given me, black ground and blue forget-me-nots, and hung by a blue ribbon. I am going to paint one for M and Hattie. I feel as if I had left something out I wanted to say. To Mrs. George Payson, Cowan Fells, August 1st, 1878. I am all alone in the house this evening, and as this gives me room at the table, I am going to begin to answer your letter. George is out of town, and all the rest, including the servants, have gone to see the mistletoe bough. It is astonishing how slowly you get well, and yet with such heat and such smells as you have in Chicago, it is yet more astonishing that you live at all. I thought it dreadful to have the thermometer stand at 90 degrees in my bedroom 3 weeks running, and to sniff a bad sniff now and then from our pond when the water got low, but I see I was wrong. We have next to no flowers this summer. White flies destroyed the roses, frost killed other things, and then the 3 weeks of burning heat, with no rain, finished up others. Portulaca is our rear guard, on which we fall back, filling empty spaces with it, and I grow more fond of it every year. A good many verbenas sowed themselves, but came up too late to be of any use. We have a splendid bed of pansies, sown by a friend here. I have not done much indoors, but renovate the house, but that has been a great job. I brought up a Japanese picture book to use as a cornice in my den, but A persuaded me to get some wallpaper and use the pictures as a dado for the dining room. The effect is very unique and pretty. I expect George home tomorrow. He has been spending a delightful week at Monmouth Beach, visiting friends. I wish I could send you some of our delicious ice cream. We have it twice a week, with the juices of whatever fruit is going, peaches being the best. We have not had much company yet. Last Saturday a friend of A's came and goes with her to Prout's Neck tomorrow. We do not count Hattie K as company, but as one of us. She gets the brightest letters from Rob S., son of George. I should burst and blow up if my boys wrote as well. They have telephone and microphone on the brain, and such a bawling between the house and the mill you never heard. It is nice for us when we want meal, or to have a horse harnessed. Have you heard of the chair, with a fan each side, that fans you 25 minutes from just seating yourself in it? It must be delightful, especially to invalids, and ought to prolong life for them. The clock is striking 9, my hour for fleeing to get ready for bed. But none of the angels have come home from the mistletoe bough, and so I suppose I shall have to make haste slowly in undressing. Love to all. August 3rd. I am delighted that you enjoyed the Surge so much. I knew you would. I forgot to answer your question about books. Have you read Noblesse Oblige? We admire it extremely. There are 2 works by this title, one poor. I read Les Miserables last winter and got greatly interested in it. Whether there is a good English translation, I do not know. That Lascellai's you've probably read. I saw a Russian novel highly praised the other day, Dosia, translated from the French, by Mary Neal, Sherwood. Victor Lascar is said to be good. I have probably praised Misunderstood to you. Strange Adventures of a Phaeton we liked, also The Maid of Sker, and Off the Skelligs. Its sequel is Fated to be Free. 2 tongues are running like mill clappers, so good night. End of chapter 15. Part 1 continued.